Welcome, Goddess, for another episode on Authentically Healed Women's Trauma Healing Podcast. I am Chloe, your host, holistic therapist, alternative therapy practitioner, and Reiki healer. And today's topic is going to be about letting go of the fear of ending alone, of ending up alone as women. So I wanted to make this video because I feel like as a woman, first and foremost, on my life, this fear has been a big theme. And I know that, from connecting with obviously women in my own close circle, but also through my work and through different situations, I know that a lot of women feel that way. And I know that a lot of women relate to that fear. And so I decided to make an episode on this. There's definitely a conditioning that we have as women when it comes to finding a partner. And I think also this generation, or at least my generation and the younger generation, especially millennials, we have also been through a lot. We're the generation that is, going to therapy, uncovering generational trauma. And, as women in this era, as millennials, it's a difficult time for us because, there's a lot of things that are kind of going south in the world. Um, and we're realizing also that as heterosexual women, more specifically, for heterosexual women, that a lot of men, a lot of heterosexual men are kind of immature, fucked up, and it's kind of like we're facing that reality where there's a lot of men who right now are just not a right fit or are just not in that mature enough for us to envision a future. We've seen also our parents, our grandparents, the way they approach, life together and relationships, and also have seen, the good side and the bad side. And I think our generation is trying to figure out what is, the balance between both and what is really best for us, for our future, if we want kids or if we have kids already, who we want to bring in our lives. Um, and I also wanted to talk about this trend. I feel like that is rising currently. You see it, a lot of in people's speeches. You see it also online. This trend where heterosexual men, kind of emphasize on, well, being only, pretends to be only attracted by like traditional mindset, traditional women who have, who aspire to be homemakers. And I think there's a huge rise also of this, the homemaking lifestyle, women at home, stay-at-home moms, and stay-at-home moms, again, it's not to throw any judgment, like stay-at-home moms are just absolutely incredible. Um, but it's this, I think a lot of women in our generation are regaining power and making wiser choices, less just emotional. And because we're going to therapy, we're making better choices. So we're less gullible, we're less, we are more down to earth. And especially if, we're conscious, we're not amongst women, we're not many to be conscious as well. So, there's a rise of conscious women. And so I think a lot of men who feel threatened try to, society also tries to pull out this narrative where, at the end of the day, what a man really wants, is a woman who can, take care of the home, cook for him, and just coming back to traditional values and glorifying them and putting, the older generation on a pedestal and kind of inciting us, this generation, to look up to that and aspire to that, which in my opinion, is just, society trying to repress us and also emphasizing on, if you want to create your, family is the goal of life, creating your family is the main goal of life. It's the only things that gives you purpose. And I think right now this is like the narrative that's coming through that as women, is trying to put in our minds as if, again, our only purpose is to create a family, that we don't have a purpose of our own, just really to distract us. So that's my opinion on this. In my opinion, like, just don't listen to that. Don't listen to that narrative that is also based on fear. Like, you're gonna end up alone if you do, you have all the, like, if you focus too much on your freedom, if you focus too much on your sexual and emotional needs, if you prioritize yourself too much, you're going to end up alone because you're being selfish. And all this narrative about women focusing on themselves being selfish. There's also a nuance that I want to bring up as well, because obviously, when you say it like this, when I'm saying this, there's nuances to it, obviously. Like, there's focusing on yourself and focusing on yourself. There's being self-centered and self-absorbed, and then also um, prioritizing your emotional and sexual needs, which is every human being should do. And that results also in attracting the right partner. That results in attracting the right people in your life. Focusing on your emotional and sexual needs does attract the right people because there are people who will resonate with that vibration. Um, so that's what I'm talking about when I say focusing on oneself. This doesn't mean that we have to, cancel out everything else, that we have to only focus on ourselves. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean forgetting about everything else, okay? You can focus on yourself and be a mom. You can focus on yourself and be a wife. You can focus on yourself and be a partner. It doesn't take away any uh other priorities, but the top one priority is needs to always be ourselves, because when we focus on prioritizing just let's start with the emotional needs. You Obviously, you are in a space where you're regulated emotionally. You can approach life and people in your life in a space where you are regulated and you are, peaceful, and you are open and all of those things. Okay. And then prioritizing our sexual needs as well. It's something that I wanted also to touch on because I feel like people just don't understand what sexual needs are. And I think in our society, we still believe like women focusing on their sexual needs and desires are bad, and men too. Like, I think women get more shades, but I know that men also are asked the same, to not focus too much on their sexual needs. I do recognize that. And I think that's the issue in our society. It's like sexual pleasure is so forbidden, is so put on the back burner, not realizing that sexual pleasure, the lack of sexual pleasure usually is one of the main reasons we feel desperate, we feel depressed, we feel sad. It's the same thing with joy. Like, sexual pleasure is something that is important. It's something that is part of our human experience, and it should be also as important as emotional needs being met. Really important, because um, it is also nourishing. And I think due to culture, due to religions, due to all the way that our civilization has evolved, and for me, in my opinion, we have like devolved. We have regressed more than anything. But due to all of that, we have ended up in a place where sexuality is not recognized as nourishing, as health, as part of our health. It's seen as it's demonized. It's especially like in certain countries in the world. I don't know where you're from, but I'm in France. So in France, people are way laid back, more laid back. And I know in the United States, people are really religious, really close-minded. and in other countries as well, obviously, where religions is prominent. But for instance, in France, no religions are prominent. The government is separated from, you know, from religion, from any religion. So although people are allowed, to have a religion, follow a religion, but the everything around, like the culture, everything is based on being separated from religion or any, you know, school of thought or belief systems. So we have made more in certain countries than other sexuality as something that we need to put on the back burner when it's part of self-care or self-nourishment. And I think because it's been demonized, people feel like, well, um, it's a bad thing. A lot of also immature heterosexual men who have been conditioned that way, who are extremely insecure, have been made to feel like their sexual needs are disgusting and bad and all of that. Well, they obviously, treat women badly for that reason and have difficulties, judging that in others. And women, same. Like when we've been judged for our sexuality, we're going to judge everyone else for our sexuality. When we have been repressed with our sexuality, we're going to judge everyone who have a free sexuality, who put their sexuality part of their priorities the same way, at the same level with their emotional needs. But again, sexuality is all this part of self-care. There's emotional, sexual, physical, all of those three that we need to take care of to feel balance and in harmony. So we women are conditioned to, to not be focused on those things, but be focused outside of us, be focused on finding a partner and this purpose that society has given to us that we need to create a family, have, meet someone as if it's our only purpose, as if we don't have already a purpose that is beyond that. And so I think that for us women, the moment we start recognizing that and healing from that conditioning, we can start focusing on ourselves and be in a space where we focus on our actual purpose, passions, what bring us life, makes us vibrate, focus also on our emotional and sexual needs. And from that place, we can attract actually, the right partner, our sexual match, because again, if you want a relationship to work, you have to be a sexual match, meaning not that sex needs to be like perfectly like aligned, but just meaning that you want the same thing. Sexuality means being willing to have intimacy with one another, being willing to, have similar taste as well. Like you need to be aligned in that area. It's the most intimate part. And when this part doesn't work, the relationship doesn't work. So, with that being said, as women, we have to let go of that fear to be able to break free from this narrative and break free from being manipulated into, changing ourselves to please men if we're heterosexual. And especially for heterosexual women, we've spent so many generations trying to please men. It's just ridiculous, trying to be what they want us to be, but just not, not being able to exist as just an individual and having to suppress ourselves for a relationship, a marriage, a partnership. So this trend currently that I have observed is really, about bullshit and people being insecure and trying to repress women. Do not follow this narrative. Understand that you're extremely powerful and that this society wants to repress you and that, trying to make you settle for less. It's always about you settling for less, you not following your purpose, you being distracted from your purpose, you making you believe that your purpose only is to serve a man, it's to serve a family, which is not. Not that you cannot serve, like you cannot raise children and serve them the way they're meant to be served. and raise them the ways they're meant to be raised. And it's not that you cannot have a relationship or a marriage where you put your marriage first, where you work on your relationship. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this shouldn't be your sole purpose. This shouldn't be your sole purpose. And you want to be with a man if you're heterosexual or someone who doesn't see you this way as well, that it's your only purpose and expects that from you. Um, you want someone that you meet that honors you the same way you honor yourself. Again, it's well known, and I'm sure that's something you've already heard, but it's extremely true. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. The way you treat yourself, the way you prioritize yourself or don't prioritize yourself, you're going to attract a match of that energy. So if you prioritize your self-care, you prioritize your sexual needs, you prioritize your emotional needs, you will meet someone who will be able to honor that in you, who will be able to love you that way. For example, on my own journey, so I had different types of relationships. I went through also an abusive relationship when I was younger. I then had more casual relationships. Then I had also, started a relationship that didn't work as well. And now I'm married. I met my husband. So for the example I want to give you is that throughout all my life, I know that I had different phases, right? And the last relationship before I met my husband was a relationship that really made me realize that if I didn't prioritize my emotional and sexual needs, because I was sexually unsatisfied, I was emotionally unsatisfied, and I did like that person very much, and I had feelings for that person, um, but it was just not working. And as much as I had feelings for that person, I was afraid of leaving that relationship for a while because I thought, well, I'm going to end up alone, right? The fear I had was I'm going to end up alone if it doesn't work there. How am I going to, there's no way, um, like, how am I going to meet a man who understands, who understands my sexual, emotional needs? Like, I haven't met any type of men like that. It seems like a lot of them are like this. Um, And, I was scared basically, the conditioning came through and I was just like, should I settle or not? And so finally I decided, to communicate, to say, listen, I'm not happy in this relationship. My sexual needs are not met. My emotional needs are not met. Well, sexually can, improvement is possible, but at least emotional, like we barely see each other. You work a lot. So, you know, I might as well have a second boyfriend or because honestly, like, I do not see any intimacy here. Um, and obviously this didn't work out this way because, you have to be with someone who's willing to step out of monogamy. And this person did try though, I want to say, which I respect a lot. This person did try, but his blocks were there. He struggled to kind of let go and actually allow me to do whatever I wanted to do. Which is also, I respect. I didn't act on it because out of respect for the person. But so at one point I had to cut it off and say, well, seems like you also, you know, you're not ready for a committed relationship. Seems that you're not ready for intimacy. I can see that, obviously you seem to be very attached to like celibacy and freedom, which I respect completely. I can understand absolutely. But I'm not going to stay in this relationship anyhow. Like, I want to move on. I want to meet someone at one point, and this is not, all of this doesn't satisfy me, right? So I did have the fear, and then very, not very long after I met my husband, and it was so interesting because the first thing he told me after that. So I stepped in this prioritizing my sexual and emotional needs. And when I met him, he was literally the first thing, nearly the first thing he said to me was like, I want you to feel free with me. You are free. Do whatever makes you happy. Do like I'm not gonna prevent you from take away your freedom. I'm not like it's literally the first thing he told me. Like I wasn't, I thought, well, maybe I will meet someone, but I'm not sure if I'll get married to anyone because I cannot see like it's hard for me to I see all those couples around me. I see all those men, those women, and everything I hear and I see and constantly is always there's the same issue. Women aren't satisfied in their marriage. Women, don't prioritize their emotional and sexual needs. They're deeply unsatisfied. They end up cheating, or they end up leaving. Like one of two. Um, or like in for those who wants to say who believe in marriage, well, they're gonna at one point cheat because they're just repressing themselves, obviously. And I was just like, that's not a life that I want. That's not the type of partnership that I want. So marriage is not, it's not really going to be on the table. Although it does feel good, and I think, this part of you that you feel like, wow, it's so sacred, it's beautiful, and it is. Marriage is beautiful. Commitment to someone is absolutely beautiful. Um, but at the time I was just thinking, well, I don't see myself getting married. I don't want to get into something where I end up leaving and being unsatisfied, which is honestly what I was expecting. But so when I met my husband, the words he said, the way he was behaving, I was just like extremely surprised, shocked, and like extremely happy because I was just I hadn't said anything about me. I didn't speak a lot at that time. Like I was, I when we met, like I was not I'm not someone who speaks a lot. I'm not someone who, when I meet someone that I like, I'm not gonna be talking, like I don't speak a lot. I'm an introvert. So I was just straight up out of the bat when I met him, I was just like, I don't speak a lot. Like I'm a very silent person. I know that a lot of, that has been an issue for a lot of people in my life, but I don't speak a lot. So I didn't speak about me very quickly. I don't speak about me very quickly, but he very quickly in our relationship said, well, I want you to be free. I want you to feel free. If like yeah, and we were in monogamy, we agreed on that, but just everything he said, the way he behaves, I was just stunned and even couldn't believe that actually a man could be in that level of maturity. Obviously, he was like way older in his life than mine, which, sometimes it does play a role. But it's also usually, the life lessons that we have in our lives that makes us mature. And he was very transparent with everything, the mistakes he made. He came to me with such vulnerability, with such authenticity, not trying to pretend to be someone he's not, not trying to seduce me, not trying to appear like the perfect husband. And I think that's the moment I thought, well, that's the type of man, like that's someone I would get married to because his authenticity was just incredible. I all the ugly things, he was able to share with me in such transparency, and he was such in a journey of I want to be transparent with the person I am with. I want to be authentic with the person I am with. And this was exactly what I was seeking. This was also um he was also in this journey of prioritizing his self-care, emotional needs, sexual needs. And when I'm saying sexual needs, for instance, for a lot of men, so my husband did that, semen retention, respecting your sperm, respecting also, not just like semen retention is beautiful for men is a practice that I personally believe all men should do. Because women on one hand were different than men in that way. We are more emotionally connected and we just don't function like men, right? So we're able to we're more emotional, like our sexuality is connected with our emotions, whilst men, their sexuality is connected with their physical body. It's really different. So men are here to learn how to control their impulses. They're there to start connecting with the feminine aspect of them and embracing it, meaning um, holding as sacred their semen and really stepping out of being a slave of their bodies, which, our society has conditioned men to be a slave to their bodies, to be animals, to like have a very difficult time. There's a lot of distraction from porn to so many things entertaining in our society that keeps you, in addiction, in sex addiction. So men are really much like conditioned that way. So semen retention is so important for men to step more into being connected with their body. That's like what a man is meant to learn. On another side, women are meant to be able also to connect more with their bodies, to step more in exploration, rather than men are meant to be more introvert, like introspecting on their healing journey. Women are meant to be more exploring, for both to find balance. Okay. So I know that my husband, when I met him, he was in that mindset of semen retention, of um, holding his sexual energy as sacred, not needing to be with multiple women, not needing to like being able to control his urge, not being a slave to his body anymore, not being impressed, by like a woman who would just hit on him in a very sexual way. Like he would not be a slave. He would not be impressed in that sense, right? Um, and at the same time, I was in a space where I was like, well, I'm more of an exploring mindset, because I'm prioritized also as a woman, my sexual and emotional needs, which is based on exploring, which is based on opening up, which is based on exploring it in the 3D, whilst my husband was more in the mindset of exploring um, his inner world, right? And so this is something that we were on this journey. Obviously, we were not perfect. I was sometimes a little still in shame, so still sometimes insecure in our relationship, still sometimes, being you know, being possessive or having some jealousy issues. On his side, he was still finding his balance between not being led by his body too much, or like, being a little distracted by the world. And so we were both like finding our balance. But so what I loved with this is the way like he was absolutely aligned with my journey. And just being able to talk about freedom and to talk about open relationships, to talk about sexuality, to talk about our experience, to be so open and vulnerable and authentic with each other. I was just sure that that was someone I could have a life with, because and commit to, because we were in that same mindset. We were in that same openness. We were literally ready to grow together and be in balance with each other and find balance with each other. And I knew that that was someone I would commit to, because we have the same values, same mindset, same way of thinking. And I was so grateful that I did let go of the previous relationship, because at that time I thought, well, will I ever meet a man who is in that same mindset and perception? And I did. And so all of that to say that it is absolutely possible to meet someone who is in that same mindset as you, who is in that same approach as you, who is in that same, um, yeah, who is going to honor and treat you the way you treat yourself and honor your sexual, emotional needs, and who is going to value them, most importantly, not necessarily fulfill everything, but just value them. So you see, all this narrative, that's why I'm talking about this narrative of having to change yourself to fit a man's narrative, to find a man to be able to not um to be able to experience love, to be able to be loved. because it's a human desire, you know. Obviously, we all have that desire deep down to meet someone, of course. But stepping out of this narrative is extremely powerful for us women, and we have to step out of this narrative because we have been conditioned and we are reminded every day that we need to align and to adapt constantly to what men want, as if like they know it all and we have to adapt to that. Whilst I believe it's the opposite. We're meant to learn how to self-love ourselves and to love ourselves unconditionally. And that means prioritizing our emotional and sexual needs and recognizing when we are not fulfilled in our relationship, recognizing when we have to have a conversation with a partner and tell them, well, I need to speak with you. I'm not fulfilled sexually, I'm not fulfilled emotionally, and have a conversation, understanding where the other is coming from, understanding, well, you know, I cannot provide for more of this, and seeing how far the partner can go. That remains like a happy place, obviously. But then also like discussing, like, if you cannot provide this for me, well, you know, if for instance we want to get married in the future, well, I should be able to fulfill those needs and desires. If you're not able to, you know, deal with it, if you're not able to fulfill them, which is not something that you blame, it's not a blame, it's just a fact. And so if you want me to be happy in our relationship, not insecure, not jealous, and having all those tantrum in our relationship, well, because a lot of, you know, we see a lot of jokes around women being insecure in relationship. Well, you know, there's a reason why also. A woman who's in her power and prioritize her emotional and sexual needs will be absolutely a darling in a relationship. I can tell you that. I can tell you that. Relationships are going to be so much easier that way as well. So, well, you know, you cannot fulfill those. Well, I will open our relation. I would prefer that we open a relationship so I can fulfill those needs and desires and sexual, emotional outside of our relationship. And then if the person is not comfortable, or wants to try and doesn't work out, well, it's just shows that it's not meant to be. And I think it's also a great way to see if the relationship is meant to be or not as well, because us women, we're so conditioned and indoctrinated to believe, you know, to constantly repress ourselves, to constantly suppress those emotional and sexual needs and be like, oh, you know, nothing is perfect. I will just suppress them. And then we're surprised that we're resentful, we're angry all the time, we're always, you know, finding something to fight about with our partner. Like, there's a reason why we are frustrated in a relationship, like we act like that in a relationship. It's not just like, oh, we're just being women. No, we're not just being women. We're just unfulfilled human beings. And when you feel unfulfilled like that, it's just time to have a conversation and sit down with your partner and have a conversation with them and tell them, you know, I'm unfulfilled. I need to open the relationship. I need to fulfill my needs and emotional and sexual needs. How much can you fulfill? Okay, well, this part I need to fulfill. I'm not going to suppress them because, like, I will just be a nightmare in our relationship. I'm going to be resentful, jealous, insecure. It's not going to be fun. Because obviously, if you suppress yourself, you end up being insecure in a relationship. You end up feeling insecure within your relationship because the moment you know, your partner, you know, make a mistake, or not even, it's just you're constantly being this fear of, well, I'm suppressing this, but I deeply desire this, but I'm suppressing it. You live in fear of your partner, you know, fulfilling that need and desire. You're projecting because you're afraid of yourself, you're suppressing, and when usually we suppress, we get to a place until one day we just lose it. Okay, so it's like it reflects we then project it on our partner, and the fear of them leaving or meeting someone else, because we're afraid that we meet someone else and we leave and we uh you know, let temptation get to us, right? So that's really what happens when someone is really insecure in a relationship, is because they're suppressing themselves. That's the truth. So to be in a happy relationship, there's no way, and that goes for everyone, not just women, obviously, everyone. Like, if we prioritize our needs and desire. But like I was saying, men need to also learn how to control and not be in a slave to their bodies and connect more with their feminine side. But women, we have to learn how to prioritize our sexual and emotional needs and take that lead. And in our relationship, say, well, that is fulfilling that, and I'm not fulfilling this way, and taking that lead. Um, and men not being lazy anymore and learning how to control themselves as well. That's like, but so in that way, that's what I'm saying. Like a man who suppress themselves is a man that, is not connected to their hearts, not connected to their spirituality, struggles to control their impulses. That's someone who's disconnected. That's someone who is caught up in addiction and in distraction. Usually men are struggling with that, being a slave to their bodies. And that's a form of disconnect from their hearts, from their true soul purpose. For women, this connection is about suppression. Usually we suppress our desires, emotional needs, and all of that. Men also can suppress things. Men also can suppress their emotional and sexual needs as well. Men also have to learn how to be intimate, have to learn also how to be transparent, have to learn to identify also their needs and not feel ashamed of the needs. They are also allowed to say, well, I need those things also. Like, they're absolutely welcome to make sense of that. But most importantly, as women, we have to be able to do that because in our society, otherwise we're going to be suppressed easily. Society is going to encourage us to suppress us, the same way society is going to encourage men to be distracted and encourage men to be a slave to their bodies, and absolutely not encourage men to regain power over their bodies, over their impulses. Yeah, that's it for this episode, goddess. Thank you for listening until the end. Let me know what you feel about this in the comment section. Feel free. And in the meantime, I'm sending you much love. Keep rising and keep shining. Send you much love.